the zip allowance. In this case, we don't have to close the zip allowance. All we need to do is, first of all, mark out where our zip allowance would be. Remember I told you that with this waistline, we have already incorporated like 2 to 3 inches of zip allowance. So I'm going to measure that out first. Now when you're placing your tape rule at the edge of a curved line like this, you have to ensure that your tape rule rests inside. That means that the upper edge of the tape rule is aligned with the edge of your waist. That's how you should do it. So you're sure that where you're placing your tape rule falls on the seam line. So I'm measuring my waist now. You can see that I'm measuring it along the line. And what I have is 27 inches. Remember that my waist is 25. So if I subtract 25 from 27, I get 2 inches. If I divide that into 2, I have 1 inch zip allowance on both sides. So I'm going to start by marking the points of my zip allowance. I'll place the two edges together. And mark 1 inch. I fold that point, and that will be where I would notch. That's where I'm going to place my zip. So I take my zip. Now this is the right side of the zip. Now when you're done with fixing it, it will look like it's just a seam line. That's how it looks like for an invisible zip. This is the right side. The right side is not really visible, but the wrong side is visible. You can see that. So this is the wrong side. So I'll now mark out the point where I want the zip to stop on the wrong side. I take out my tape rule and measure the length. What I have here is about 10.5 inches. All I need is about 8 inches long. That's okay for me. So I'll just take my tailor's chalk and mark it here. I think I've taken a note of where that is. So I'll mark it there like that. I'll mark it on the other side like that. So I have the marks on 2 sides. Now it's very important that we mark this. If we don't mark it, we would not get our zips being equal and the same on each side. So once I've done that, I open up my zip like that. Now if I do that and I roll it over, you can see that the zip rolls over. That's the zip teeth rolls over like that. So I'm going to sew near that point where I have the fold, and that will give me a neat zip seam. So I'll place that here, like here. Pin it in place, ensure that it's directly on that notch. So I roll it open, and I now begin to stitch. I ensure that I roll it open and stitch. I stitch down to where I have my point. I ensure that I roll it open. That's the only way you can get to see. You can actually use an invisible zipper foot to sew it if you're using a straight sewing machine, or even on your zigzag or electric machine, you can still use an invisible zipper foot. It's there. But because this is a wider, foot, it's easier for it to just press it open flat. That's why I'm not using the invisible zipper foot for it. So once I'm done with that, I zip it up like that. You can see that it's zipped up now. You can see that I've done this side. I'm going to sew the second side. So I'll zip it up first, and then put it on the other side. Can you see that? Now the reason why I have to zip it up is that if you don't zip it up, it's possible that you could twist your zip without knowing it. And once you're sewing it, you now find out that it's twisted, and that could be really frustrating. So once I've done this, I zip it up, I now pin it back up like that, and I unzip. This is quite safe for me now. So once I've done that, I'll do exactly what I've done on the other side. I roll it open and I now begin to stitch. Yeah. I roll it open and I now begin to stitch. So once I get to that point, I now tighten that point. I'll lift it up. Now, what I'll do now will be to zip it up completely. Now, let me show you how it looks like. Now, you can see that it looks like it's a seam. You don't really see the zip. That's why it's so nice to use an invisible zip, because that's why it's called invisible zip. It's meant to be invisible. So this is how it looks like. So next thing for me now would be to join this open edge here. So we turn it back. I pin these two together. I hold it together like that and ensure that it's on the same line. I pin it down. And I just sew like about an inch and a half upwards, just to secure that point there. I sew it to meet where this line is, where I just finished sewing my. If you don't sew it from the bottom now up, I just gave it like about 2 or 3 inches. If I don't sew it this way, if I want to start from here all the way down, I'll find that I'll have a little space, and you will see that peeping out from the zip side. So it's better to start from just about 2 inches upwards, and then afterwards I now finish up my zip allowance. Now, as I'm just doing now. So I can remove this pin and just continue and finish up the seam. Now it's easier for me to just finish it all the way to the end now. Now you can see that I've sewn my zip allowance now. So I just need to use my lining to turn it. Now this is how it looks like now. Practically done with the skirt. I just now take my lining. This is my lining. Now I have sewn 8 inches of zip. So that means all I need to do is mark out 8 inches on my zip on my lining and sew down. I need to leave that space. I'm sure you remember how we did our skirt, so it shouldn't give you any hassles. So I'll just mark that out. Now because this is lining, it's possible it could stretch a little bit more than fabric, so I'm sure that okay, let's just measure out 8 inches, or about say maybe, yeah, 8.5 inches is fine. So I pin that. And I'll sew here. You can see that the flared skirt is very easy to sew Very easy to sew. The only thing is that it takes a lot of fabric, so you should be prepared to use a lot of fabric to make your either your fully flared skirt or your semi-flared skirt or your quarter flared skirt. So now I'm going to place this directly on my skirt like this. Oh, sorry. Turn it upside down. Fine. This is where my zip is. So I'll now take my lining, put it directly on it like that. You can see this is the right side of my lining. I'm facing it to the right side of my fabric. So the first thing I do is to take my notched area. This is my notched area. Place it on the notched waist. Once I've done that, I can now begin to pin. So I begin to pin. I'll unzip my zip now so that I can create some room to turn it over the zip. So it's pretty much the same way we did our 6-piece skirts, how we turned it over. So the excess here, I just turn it over like that. It doesn't necessarily have to stay closed here because it's also on a flare. So I'll just allow it to just drop gently like that. Okay, so the other edge now, I fold it over the zip area like this and sew. So I'm going to sew my seam allowance. Okay, so we begin to turn it around. So now I've already sewn round. I'll now begin to notch all the way round. Remember that this is a waistline, so we just have to notch all the way round. Remove the excess or the bulk at that point because that will help you turn around properly. So I'll just notch it like that. Ensure you don't cut through the seam line. So we'll cut off the excess here too. So all we just now do now would be to top stitch it. So we're going to top stitch it on the lining. And I'm going to turn this to the wrong side. This will help me top stitch it well. So I'll top stitch on the lining. So just follow it like that, the edge. Ensuring that your top stitch makes the edge of the waistline firm, and it keeps your lining in properly. So we've top stitched on the lining now. We're now going to turn it in and now top stitch on the fabric, or rather edge stitch, because we're now top stitching at the edge, so that's edge stitching. So I'll turn this in. So you can see that now it's turned in. So the first thing I would do would be to ensure that I have a very straight edge. So what I'll do is zip it up first. I'll now fold to ensure that I have the same edge. This is very important so that it looks neat. Now this is what I'm going to do. See? Try to get the same edge. Make sure that the two sides are the same height. You don't want one looking a quarter inch different in length. You want the two to be this exact height. You can see that. And see, it's about the same. Fine. So I just unzip, and I'll now begin to edge stitch with a 1/4 inch. You can see that we're actually done with our skirt. It's so easy to make. Good. So I now begin a top stitch, 1/4 inch round the waist. So now I'll finish that up. So now that I've finished that up, the next thing I'm going to do will be to hem it down to the zip. That's the next thing we're going to do now. Let's turn it to the wrong side and pin it together. Now, look at what we've done. We're going to pin this down to our zip. Remember how we always hem this down when we're done with turning? So let's pick our needle and begin to hem. So now we're going to start hemming. I'm sure you're already used to doing this, so it's a piece of cake for you. So we'll just start by hemming. So we're already halfway now. Yeah. So now we have finished our hemming. So we'll now go to the ironing board, press it, and then try it on our mannequin. So we're going to start ironing by pressing open our zip allowance so that you have a flat seam there. Press it open. So the edge of your fully flared skirt will be neatened off with your industrial weaving machine. Your teachers will show you how to do that. Your instructors will show you how to do that. So now we've already ironed our fully flared skirt. So let's go and try it out on our mannequin. You can see that we've already completed our fully flared skirt. It just took us like about 30 minutes to make. It's so easy. I tell you, it's so easy. So why don't you try it out? Make your arc and now cut it out. Show it to your instructors and now begin to sew. It's so easy. Now you can add this flare to any side, any part of your outfit. You can add it to your break. You can add it to the edge of your blouse. You can